Hello, gazers.
Hello, gazers. Dr. Lee here.
And this is Dave.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. I'm just opening the bubbles that we've got today.
Hooray.
Hooray, hooray, hooray.
Another episode with bubbles.
Another episode with bubbles. It has to be done, isn't it? It's
Doesn't
rude not
it,
to. I
darling?
think our gazers expect it of us now.
I think so. I'd like to think they're at home drinking along, quietly sobbing.
Yes, that's the state of the world. Anyway, we're here to cheer you up.
Yes, we are.
These bubbles are Prio Grigio.
Right.
Doesn't sound very classy, does it?
Well, we'll give it a shot, love.
Yeah.
After a couple of sips, it's
Okay.
all irrelevant anyway, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I only put it in the fridge for half an hour.
We'll struggle on.
Yeah, there was loads of really expensive champagne in there, but I just thought, well, it's Friday afternoon, we can't really justify it.
It's just wasted on us.
Exactly, you know.
Hey, there we go.
Okay, look at that. Oh, it's all
That-
fizzing.
Oh, it's all very dry ice, isn't it?
The anti-spillage coops have come out again.
Very hammer horror. Look at that.
That's a nice sound.
It's a nice sound, isn't
Now,
it?
I get quite frisky on bubbles, just
Do
to
you?
forewarn you.
God.
There we go. The bubbles whoosh right up my nose.
Do they?
Yeah, and cheers. That wasn't
That was
very
a really-
good.
that was a really
That's really.
dull
I have to hold it
clank.
by the stem, darling.
By the stem.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everyone. Crack open a little glass of something that you love and listen along. I'm a little bit tired, has to be said.
Why?
Because been digging in the garden,
For gold.
burying my husband.
Another one.
Yeah. No, it's been really nice weather.
It's been lovely.
I've just been tidying up the garden because, you know, they say you should spring clean your house.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in saying you should spring clean your garden as well.
Yes.
Get it ready for summer. Prune everything, get all the old seed heads off and regenerate your garden. And
Right.
it's really lovely to see. I mean, it used to be sex, drugs and rock and roll, but I just get really elated when I see buds coming on trees now.
Is that a euphemism?
No, this is literally a bud on a tree.
I noticed that my clitoris has started to bud.
Oh, right.
Of course, I mean my clematis.
Yes.
But I had a similar experience. I thought, I'm going to get out and do some stuff in the garden. My neighbours had some big shrubs cut down and all the branches had fallen over into mine. Quite annoying. So I started to move them and discovered a little nest of frogs just hanging out under them. So I just carefully placed them back on the top and thought, wow, that's an excuse not to do it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Went back
absolutely.
in.
I've got a question for our gazers.
Yeah.
Can you pollard an ash tree? Okay, just I'm throwing it out there to all our gazers. Anybody who knows that kind of thing, because I really want to pollard my ash tree.
Is that Sue Pollard, your ash tree?
To pollard my ash tree.
Is that another euphemism?
No,
Please tell
I
me
just
it is.
want to pollard my ash tree. Sorry,
Good.
darling.
Very middle class, aren't we?
Low on the euphemisms today. I've just been practical.
Tits, bum, fanny. There we
Yeah.
go. That's not euphemisms. That's just...
Want to be a yellow coat.
Can I talk about something that's done my head in this week?
Go on then.
There's been some
Do it.
negative press about Doctor Who. And it's the usual stories from the usual disreputable sources talking about a fan backlash against woke Doctor Who, using exactly the same language as we used against Jodie Whittaker 4 or 5 years ago when she became the Doctor. And it's almost as if certain sections of the press can't bear to see a Doctor that isn't a white straight man and will just employ the same stories and tools again to try and bring the show down.
How much of it do you also think it's BBC bashing?
Absolutely. All tied up in the same thing.
Yeah.
But it just balls my piss, that's all day.
It's a non-story, isn't it?
Non-story.
It's a way primarily to bash the BBC, but also to get a little bit of wokery bashing in as well.
Exactly.
It was the same when Jodie Whittaker was announced as a woman.
Well, this is what I've just
Well,
said.
not that she wasn't announced as a woman. We knew she was a woman.
That's exactly what I was saying. And the stories are using exactly the same language as they used 5 years ago. You know, it's just pathetic, honestly.
Do you think Doctor Who's got woker?
Doctor Who's always been woke. You can look at any story from the last 60 years and there's always been a progressive ideology behind it. Always. And at certain points it's had producers who've been more in tune with society and what was going on at the time, and they've had more kind of overt progressiveness, but it's always been a liberal show, for God's sake. So has it got more woke? No.
You're preaching to the converted here, darling.
Yeah, cyber converted.
Yes, I've got both feet well and truly in your camp. We've got quite a bit to get through today, haven't we?
Yes, we have, because today we're looking at Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs.
First released in January 1993.
Yes.
What's your relationship with Reservoir Dogs, Dave?
I saw it when it came out. Had a poster on my wall as a student, as we all did.
I didn't, but everybody did.
Most of you had
Everybody
Banana on,
did.
didn't you?
I did, exactly. And Purdy.
Yeah, nestled next to my Janet Jackson and Madonna posters, I had a Reservoir Dogs poster. Because do you remember when you went to uni and you went to the student union?
Yeah.
They had their massive poster sales.
Yes.
That was in the day when you were allowed to put posters on your wall, not like now.
Not like now. You get blue tack charges and everything. Yeah. I was the same as you. I saw it just after it came out. I remember suddenly everybody on my course, because I was in the drama degree, everybody was starting to do performances which had these stylized sections with funky old music, possibly violence. All the lads started to do this kind of lad violence performance shows and stuff. And didn't see it since then. At the time, I was a little bit, not so much not interested, but it was just a film about boys and men, wasn't it?
Boys, guns, testosterone flying around, blood.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it at the time.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
Because Quentin Tarantino was kind of hailed as the next big thing. And obviously he's gone on to
Huge
really
thing,
good
obviously,
stuff, huge stuff. But this was kind of like his debut film as a director, wasn't it?
A little indie film.
Yes.
Made quite cheaply.
Very cheaply, but got under the nose of Harvey Keitel.
That's right.
And he was able to put it forward to the studio to get studio backing and a bigger budget.
Yes. So before we have a deep dive, should we cross over to the news desk to see what was happening in the UK in 1993?
Rustling papers.
So 1993 in Britain, bit of a big year. Some horrible things happen, actually. But a big year for Diana, Princess of Wales. Because in January, newspapers carry reports that she wants a divorce from Charles, despite 9 months before in their separation saying there were no plans for a divorce. And then in November that year, she sues the Daily Mirror for photographs that are taken of her at a gym. Do you remember those pictures of her in a cycling
from above.
shorts? Yeah.
Spread eagled.
Yeah. And then in December that year, she announces she's withdrawing from public life.
She didn't though, did she?
Not really. I mean, she'd stopped all her most of her charity work, and she does to some extent, but she can't because she's just being hounded by the press all the time at this point. So it's impossible for her. It's kind of weird when you look at things about Diana at this time, because you know that 4 years later she's going to be dead.
Yeah.
It's really weird, and just to have that essence of somebody just living their life with a clock ticking very much so that they're unaware of, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. And it's kind of difficult to kind of compartmentalize what she was doing at any one point in her life towards the end, because it moves so fast.
Yeah.
The divorce, then it was taking up with the surgeon, and then it was taking up with Dodi Fayed, the landmine visit, the Saint-Tropez diving board, photographs and everything.
Yeah, it's only 18 months from her divorce to her death.
Wow.
And how old was she? 36, 37? I mean,
Crazy. Okay, so some sad news, so we'll just briefly touch on this. On the 12th of February, it was the murder of James Bulger. A 2-year-old is murdered by two 10-year-old boys on Merseyside.
That was a shocker, wasn't it?
Really, real shock.
There have been studies that have shown that this is a bit of a turning point, because when we were kids, we were allowed to play outside. You'd go out at 10 in the morning in the summer holidays and you'd come back at 6 o'clock for your tea.
Yeah.
Your mum and dad knew you
Fine,
were safe.
get back before it gets dark.
Yeah. But from this point on, there's a sea change in parents becoming unwilling to let their kids go out and play. It's a real shame, God, especially for kids. But this was terrible, absolutely. And that haunting image of him in the shopping centre being led away. I mean, gruesome.
Yes, horrible. On the 20th of March, the IRA bombs the town centre of Warrington, claiming the life of 3-year-old Jonathan Ball and injures more than 50 other people. And on the 25th of March, the blasts claim a second fatality when a 12-year-old Timothy Parry dies in hospital from his injuries. It's still going on at this point,
it just shows you as well that it's still really kind of a big thing, isn't it? The year I moved to London, there was a bus blown up in Holborn, so it's still conflict.
It feels like another world now, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. And there's more hideous news. The 22nd of April, Stephen Lawrence, the Black London teenager, is stabbed to death at Eltham in South London while waiting for a bus.
Gosh, it's all going on, isn't it, this year?
What the hell? I mean, and it's just another wasted life that's just cut short, and
it's only kind of in retrospect, now we're reading all this, how much of a significant year it was news-wise, because At the time, we were in the throes of being students, weren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you didn't really have a care in the world.
No, not at all.
You had a grant.
Yeah.
Your digs were cheap.
Yeah.
You just basically were pissing it all up the wall,
Yeah.
weren't you?
I got £600 a term from my education authority, and my rent was only £135 a term.
That's crazy.
I mean, was this 30 years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, God, imagine now.
It's like another lifetime ago, but also it feels like it was only yesterday in some respects as well.
Yeah, it does.
We have matured.
Yeah, we have.
We have grown. Do you need a top up yet? Are you all right?
I'm all right, darling.
Yeah, okay.
There's a couple of showbiz losses. Comedian and TV presenter Les Dawson died suddenly from a heart attack. To be fair, he was in a great place because he was having a medical checkup at Greater Manchester Hospital. He was aged 62. God love him, a bit of Les.
Love a bit of Les.
Love a bit of
Love
Les.
his Ada and Sissy with
Yes.
Roy Barraclough.
Yeah, yeah.
I worked with Roy Barraclough once.
Yes, in Corrie.
No.
Oh.
Holby City.
Oh.
He was lovely.
I bet he was.
He was such
Yeah.
a sweet man.
I bet he was.
On the 11th of June...
Day after Les.
The day after Les, on the 11th of June, actor and comedian Bernard Bresslaw dies suddenly from a heart attack following a collapse in his dressing room at London's open-air theatre at the age of 59.
59. I mean, bloody hell.
I've got 9 years to go.
I've only got 7.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you were older than me.
Oh, by 1. Yeah. I was watching my new Doctor Who Blu-ray the other day, and John Pertwee's first season, and John Pertwee was 50 years old when he became Doctor Who, but of course, being a 1969 50, he looks like he's 65.
Fucking hell, he
It's
does.
amazing. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Well, that explains why he looks so old, but actually he's still quite fit and he can do all those martial arts moves.
Yeah, but then 4 years later, his back's gone.
Oh, is it?
He can't do it properly.
Mind you, if I tried to throw a sea devil over my shoulder now, I'd be laid up for 3 months.
Is that a euphemism? After millions of years of being an isolated island, after having broken away from the mainland continent of Europe, on the 20th of June, a high-speed train makes the first journey from France to England via the Channel Tunnel, which will open to the public the following year. So for the first time in millions of years, Britain is connected to mainland Europe.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Amazing, actually.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I remember that very, very vividly. Well, not the train making its first journey, but the handshake through the
Yes,
tunnel when they
yeah.
first made landfall between the two.
Yeah.
But yeah, very significant year this, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's a final big shocking event for the end of the year, darling.
Oh, yes. On the 1st of October, QVC launches the first television shopping channel in the UK.
I mean, if you want to get your tats, your rings for your nan, the future starts here, doesn't it?
I don't think I've ever watched an episode of QVC. Or...
I've only watched it when they've done tasks on The Apprentice.
Oh, they're funny out there. They're the best bits.
Talk for 20 minutes about this piece of jewellery.
We should try that one day.
Yeah.
Yes. Talk for 20 minutes on this silver pen.
Yes. Maybe not now.
So, as we're looking at Reservoir Dogs, we're going to look at the top 10 films of the year, 1993. Honourable mention, number 11, Reservoir Dogs.
Yes.
That's what we're looking at
Going
at the
to look
moment.
at. So number 10, there's a heartwarming comedy, Sleepless in Seattle, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
I don't think I saw it.
I did see it.
Was it good?
You know me in rom-coms.
Oh, yeah. Cliffhanger, number 9, Sylvester Stallone. I watched
saw
that.
that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It made me seasick.
Yeah, I mean, I
Oh,
couldn't-
it was too much.
Yeah, I couldn't handle it. Anything with heights and hanging off heights, I can't do it.
Well, it wasn't so much that, it was just the camera moves were just
Okay.
dizzying.
Right. Number 8, The Firm.
Oh, Tom Cruise. We talked about Tom Cruise in
Yeah,
our last
yeah.
episode, didn't we?
Yeah. Is that a John Grisham novel? I think it is, isn't it? That was a lot of John Grisham novels at the time,
It's
wasn't
easy
there?
for you to say.
Yeah, not really.
Number 7, A Few Good Men. Again, that's Tom Cruise, riding high this year.
Demi Moore's in that. isn't she?
Friend of the podcast.
At number 6, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I enjoyed that film. It was high camp.
It's high camp. I rewatched it relatively recently. It's just a bit earnest. Also features the worst English accent. Well, one of the worst. Uma Thurman's Emma Peel is still the worst. But Keanu Reeves is just... I don't know what he's on in that film. But...
There's no saving grace about that accent at all.
No.
It's very, dude, where's my car?
Yes.
/ English.
Plus his performance is terrible.
It's
It's terrible. But Sadie Frost as the vampire,
Yeah.
she's fantastic.
Have you seen the behind-the-scenes footage of Francis Ford Coppola directing Gary Oldman and Gary Oldman getting really frustrated and shouting
No.
at Francis Ford Coppola?
No.
And it's all about how he should walk up some stairs.
Really?
Tensions were fraying.
Wow.
I did enjoy the film, but yeah, there were a few shite bits to it as well.
Yeah, there were. Really.
Yeah. Speaking of Demi Moore.
Yeah, number 4, Indecent Proposal.
Yeah.
She's huge, isn't she, looking back on this?
Yes,
Yeah.
she really is. This is kind of, well, not her heyday, but I mean, she's still riding high.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 4, The Bodyguard.
Wow. Yeah.
And
I'll always love you.
Okay, I could watch The Bodyguard over and over again. I really enjoy it, and I enjoy it for Whitney Houston's performance.
Right.
I thought she was great.
Yeah, she is good. She could be Madonna.
Yeah, it could have been Madonna.
Madonna blew it, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Well, or she didn't blow it.
Yeah, well.
Whichever school of thought you come from. Weren't we watching an interview with Sam Fox when she said she was up for the part in The Bodyguard?
Yeah, that's right. No, was it Dick Tracy?
Oh,
It was
yes,
Dick
Dick
Tracy.
Okay.
Number 3, Aladdin.
Yeah, it's all
22.
right.
I was at uni. I wasn't bothered about frigging Aladdin.
I wasn't. Don't say that too loud because Will Smith might come and punch you. Number 2, The Fugitive, Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones. Good film, actually.
Never saw it.
Yeah.
Based on the 60s TV show, wasn't it? You get a lot of those. Mission Impossible's going to come around here. The Avengers is going to come around this time. Yeah. Number 1 is, I mean, you've been in this series, haven't you, this franchise?
I have been associated with this franchise.
It's on your CV.
It
Jurassic Park. I mean, I remember seeing that at cinema and being blown away by it, as was everybody.
Okay, so now if a young person watches it, they're going to think, oh, this is just like any other. And it's probably a bit naff 'cause it's got old film stars in it.
Yeah.
At the time.
And yeah.
It blew everyone away.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That first shot when they're in that Jeep and they hear that noise, then suddenly all these dinosaurs are coming over there.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's just filmmaking at its best. He knew every single beat to draw you in, to thrill you.
Yeah.
And to keep you entertained right until the bitter end.
And
it was
suddenly
a masterpiece.
Everyone knows what a velociraptor is.
You don't want to mess with a velociraptor.
You really don't.
You don't. If you come across a velociraptor, it's game over.
Game over, love. Right, should we have a look at the top 20 singles for the week of the 10th of January 1993?
Let's do it.
I'm quite confident we're going to know some here.
I do. Yeah, this is our student years. You know, we're out in the clubs dancing.
Yeah. Number 20, It's Gonna Be a Lovely Day by Cell System. I presume that's a cover.
Number 19, Someday I'm Coming Back. Lisa Stansfield.
Out of Space.
I'm transcending from
outer
space.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, that was a staple of the Union on a Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, the Miami hit mix for Gloria Estefan.
Yeah.
And it was just literally just a medley of all her hits to a dance beat.
Yeah.
Right up my straw.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah, I was never an Estefan fan. 17, Steam, Peter Gabriel.
Yeah, I just never really got Peter Gabriel. I'm sorry.
No, don't know it.
Number 16, Arranged Marriage by Apache India.
Number 15, Step It Up, Stereo MCs. That was a banger.
I remember dancing in the clubs to that.
Me too.
Oh, 14, The Love I Lost featuring Sybil. West End featuring Sybil.
Yeah, another great track.
Yes.
I'm liking this chart.
Oh,
so
it's good,
far.
yes.
Yeah. Number 13, Broken English Sunscreen. Probably know it, vaguely remember it, but...
Oh, number 12, Womankind, Little Angels. Now, they're a very little known rock/punk band.
Were they?
I think Little Angels, from Scarborough.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go.
Number 10, The Devil You Know, Jesus Jones.
I know Jesus Jones. I used to really fancy the singer, but I don't know that song. Pop Police itself at number 9 with Get the Girl, Kill the Baddies.
I told you about my Pop Release Itself story, haven't I?
No.
When I was at university and went to do a course in transcendental meditation.
No.
Me and my friend, Robert. You know when you just pick something to do and you just think it might be quite a laugh?
Yeah.
We're walking down the corridors and we walked into this lecture room, whatever. And there was these people there. And we said, oh, is this the transcendental meditation class? And they said, no, we're the band. We're on in the student union at 10 o'clock. And then we went to student union. It was Pop Will Eat Itself.
Early brush with celebrity.
Early brush with fame. It could have been so different, couldn't it?
Would I Lie to You, Charles and Eddie at number 8. Favourite of my mother's.
Really?
Yes, those two. She loved
Actually,
that
it
song.
was very inoffensive, that song, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
They had long mullets, didn't they?
I think so.
And
I wonder how much money they made out of that.
It depends if they wrote it or not, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. The Shaman, number 7, Forever People. I love that one.
I have their album, The Shaman.
Yeah. But it's of the time.
Of the time.
Of the time.
Number 6, I'm Easy / Be Aggressive by Faith No More. Never a Faith No More fan.
No, more me. Oh, God. Heal the World. Michael Jackson at number 5.
Yawn.
If you listen to our Brit episodes, you'll know that he is still banging this drum 4 years later with his Earth song.
Number 4, Mr. Wendell by Arrested Development. Classic.
Classic. Number 3, another classic, Could It Be Magic? Take That, featuring Lulu.
Yes.
I told you about my erotic dream featuring all of Take That.
No, you didn't.
I did. Oh, my God.
I saw Take That once, jumping out the back of the minibus onto a Radio 1 roadshow.
Right.
Yeah, that's another early brush with fame I had.
Yeah. No wonder you were destined for the career you had.
I was. The signs were there from
No
a very
wonder.
early age. Number 2, Exterminate, Snap, featuring Nikki Harris. You know who Nikki Harris is, don't you?
No.
One of Madonna's backing singers.
Okay.
As in Donna and Nikki, the famous twosome.
Are they a bit like the Reynolds girls?
No, it's Donna and Nikki. They've gone on to do their own things like she did. Huge things.
Huge things.
But they
Are they
supported...
the ones in the Vogue video?
Yes, they are.
Ah, okay.
That's Nikki Harris.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And in Truth or Dare.
Yes, of course, I know who they are. Yeah. Should we see what's number 1?
Yeah, let's go to number 1.
Well, I mean, it had to be, didn't it? The film's come out. It's I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. Written by Dolly Parton, of course. Wrote on the same day as Jolene.
Wow.
I mean, that's
just bosh them off.
Isn't it? Bosh them off.
That's what it's like with a lot of the big worldwide hits, you know. They bosh them off in a couple of hours.
Bosh them off in a couple of hours.
Raking millions. Where did we go wrong?
Okay, well, that was the charts.
Okay.
Quite a good one, I think.
I thought so. I mean, I was kind of unconscious for half of the 1993, but I do remember some of them.
And we'd be giving it jip to the ones we do remember.
Proper giving
Big
it jip.
time.
Properly scraping together some pennies to get a pint of snake bite in Student Union.
Snake bite and black.
Oh
my
Snakebite
God. Do you remember 2020 as well? That mad dog.
I remember once going to the Student Union about this time, getting so drunk and falling headfirst down this really steep set of concrete steps.
Wow.
Woke up in a chip shop.
Chips and curry sauce, no doubt. Oh, I'd love some chips and curry sauce.
I would.
Yeah.
Just to wash this Prio Grigio down with.
Prio Grigio.
Yeah.
Speaking of.
Yeah. I think it's a mixture of Prosecco and
Pinot Grigio.
Pinot Grigio. Can take the boys out of the north, can't you?
Tell you.
Cheers.
No, fill me up, Daddy.
Before we take a deep dive, shall I give you a little brief outline about Reservoir Dogs?
Please do.
Okay, so Reservoir Dogs is released in America in 1992, released in the UK in 93, hence why we're focusing on 93. It was an American crime film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino in his feature-length directorial debut. It stars Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Chris Penn, Steve Buscemi, Lawrence Tierney, Michael Madsen, Tarantino and Eddie Bunker as diamond thieves whose heist of a jewelry store goes terribly wrong. The film incorporates many motifs that have become Tarantino's hallmarks, i.e. violent crime, pop culture references, profanity, and non-linear storytelling, and is regarded as a classic of independent film and is also known as a cult film.
Indeed.
So, Lee, why don't you just give us a little rundown of what happens in Reservoir Dogs?
Sure. In the aftermath of a failed diamond heist, 6 strangers who've never met before try and discover who was the traitor in their midst and who sold them out to the cops. There's ultra-violence, sharp suits and sunglasses, some iconic moments and a killer soundtrack. Blood will be shed and ears will be severed before the whole thing ends in a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. What did you think?
Well, I really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. There were some sections, some scenes that were a bit overly long dialogue-wise. But apart from that, I felt that it was really well put together. Well shot, because I'm a fan of Tarantino and I have watched his subsequent films, and I think this filming style, while it's a really good looking film, you can tell, judging by his subsequent works, that this was the work of a debut director.
Right.
Shots wise, it was very simply filmed.
Yes.
Also, that has to do with, like we say, it's quite low budget. Most of it is set in a warehouse, which obviously budget wise is kind of a godsend to have a whole film set in one place. Obviously, it's not all set there. There are flashbacks to other scenarios, but yeah, I thought it was great. What did you think of it?
I quite surprised myself. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was super interesting for what it had to say about masculinities and competing masculinities. And I really liked the complicated characters, actually. I thought they were really well drawn. There were definitely some problematic elements, but I really, really enjoyed it in a way that quite surprised myself, actually.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about this was the non-linear storytelling. It offered pieces of information to tell the whole story in the present time and then in flashbacks as well. The way it pieced all the narratives together. I kind of enjoyed the flashbacks a little more than I did the scenes inside the warehouse, to be honest with you.
They were more satisfying, weren't they? I guess partly because you're learning what got them up to that point. Yeah. But I agree. I guess they were just fleshing out the characters more as well, weren't they?
I thought there were some great action scenes.
Yeah.
It's like in downtown Los Angeles, isn't
That's
it?
right, yeah. Lots of it reminds me of Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they filmed in an old mortuary, apparently. And apparently there's still some stiffs in the basement.
Oh, really?
And the Tim Roth apartment was above the warehouse they used for the bottom of it. So super cheap to make. I mean, and you forget that it's just filled with moments that became instantly kind of iconic. You know, the titles.
Yeah.
The 5 of them walking towards in their black suits, or the 6, how many there are at that point, which obviously becomes the poster that everybody had.
Harvey Keitel pointing his gun down to Steve Buscemi, who's pointing up at that moment.
Yeah, that whole end where they're all pointing guns at each other, which I believe is lifted from a Japanese movie. Yeah. There was a lot of it which felt like a lot of Japanese violent movies I've seen.
Yeah, there was a lot of homage paid to it.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, Quentin Tarantino is known as the man who knows practically every single film that's ever been made.
Yeah.
He's quite encyclopedic in his knowledge.
Yeah. But I was really struck by going back to the idea of these complicated forms of masculinities which were shown. Like the first kind of part in the warehouse is the Tim Roth character who's bleeding out having been shot. And there's a real tenderness between Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth. And it kind of reminded me of the stories I read when I was researching my PhD about men in battle and the relationships that form between men under duress. I thought it was super interesting, and it just kind of spoke of these characters displaying caring behaviours at the same time displaying these ultra-violent behaviours as well, and showing that there are different expressions of masculinity available to these characters. And I thought that was great.
Yeah, I didn't really think of it that way, but I wonder how much of that is to do, like, when you're staring death in the face, the bravado and the masks of masculinity fall away, and what you get is not necessarily more feminine energy, but
it's a love
and a less watered down masculinity there.
Yeah, it's an expression of male love, that isn't usually permitted. And you're right, under duress. I mean, think specifically of the First World War, when men would openly declare their love for each other, because you're in these situations and it's accepted. And Mr. White is almost paternal as well. And that's another thing that's expressed, especially in the Vietnam War. And I was thinking, when they were filming this, obviously it's an American movie, like Vietnam and stories of Vietnam, which had only finished less than 20 years before, were really common currency, and Born on the 4th of July is coming out, I'm not sure the year, but again, that idea of masculinities under fire and what they are permitted to do when they're under fire in a way that they're not permitted to do in normal life. Yeah. I thought it was super interesting.
There was a lot of what I would call bravado in this film. A lot of seeing whose balls hung the lowest. A lot of peacocking, a lot of performative behaviour.
Yeah.
And I think it was kind of encapsulated in the opening scene, actually, when they were talking about Madonna's Like a Virgin. And they were all talking about what their version of Like a Virgin meant, what the lyrics meant. There was a lot of profane language. There was a lot of degrading language towards women that wouldn't necessarily be said if women were in the room. It was all about male bonding, I suppose, wasn't it?
Yeah. And again, it speaks of when you put masculinities within each other, the competition among them, and it happens all the way through this film. Mr. Blonde and Mr. White, they're basically seeing who can piss up the urinal the highest, as men are wont to do. Which again speaks of one of the conditions of masculinity that says this is what you have to do. We've got to get one up on basically just pushing each other on to be top dog, which is another thing that men are told they're supposed to do within each other, whether that's talking about women derogatorily, whether that's talking about how many women they fucked, whether that's being who's the toughest. It's one of those codes of masculinity, which I think this film explores really well.
Yeah. Just to lend to that, what you were saying, there was one scene, it's kind of towards the end, but it was also a flashback, where the boss, Joe, he's called, who's kind of drawn all these people together, is giving them their pseudonym names, their code names, Mr. Pink, Mr. White, Mr. Orange, etc. And one of them says, why can't we choose our own colours? And he says, no, because the minute you start choosing your own colours, you're going to argue about who wants what colour. That's why I'm giving you your colour. Yeah. Kind of a way of saying you're going to try and get one over on each other. Yes. You're going to try and top each other. Yeah. See who can get the others to agree with what you want. Yes. Because then they will give you the top dog status. Yeah. That's why I'm giving you your names. You're not allowed to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, within that scene, I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised at how non-homophobic this film was. In a way that often homophobia is used really lazily to establish the masculinity of characters. And in that scene, of course, Mr. Pink doesn't want to be Mr. Pink because pink is obviously associated with femininity. But that's as far as that goes. He's slapped down. And the only other kind of mention of homophobia is in a flashback scene with Nice Guy Eddie and Mr. Blonde. Nice Guy Eddie is the son of the big daddy.
Chris Penn.
Yeah. Apparently none of the actors could stand the actor who played the big old Godfather one.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently it's a pain in the arse. And in their flashback scene, Nice Guy Eddie's disparaging Mr. Blonde's sexuality and calling him a butt cowboy and stuff.
Yeah, for being in jail.
Yes. But that's it. It doesn't... They end up having a scuffle, obviously, because obviously if you denigrate or question a straight man's sexuality, then that's one of the most offensive things that the codes of masculinity tell you can do or to accuse them of any kind of femininity. Yeah. But that's it for the film. Yeah. Back to the scene where Mr. Pink's given his name and he's told it's because you're a faggot. Yeah. I fucking hate that word. Yeah. I hate that word. But it's of its time and place within that movie.
And within the realms of men talking to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And that casual homophobia amongst straight men is only ever really about the person who's deploying it. Yes. Displaying their own rigid heterosexuality and masculinity. Yeah. So it's, it's understandable within a movie.
Yeah. In that scene where he's talking to Mr. Blonde, the way that Mr. Blonde just lets it wash over him, he doesn't counteract it.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is not important. I know what you're saying is just all for show. It's not really important. You don't really mean it. Yeah. That kind of thing. I thought this was far more of a racist movie than it was a homophobic movie.
Yeah, the racism is really quite uncomfortable to watch.
That's the one thing that I feel has aged about this film.
Yeah, because there's very little misogyny in this film, even though the conversation you said in the opening conversation about Madonna, that's not necessarily misogynistic. They're not slagging Madonna off. No. They're talking about
interpretation,
actually.
Yeah, interpretation.
But God, the racism was the language of it. There's talk about Mr. Blonde being raped by black men while he's in prison. Yeah. They're talking about black women aren't the same as white women.
Yeah.
There's a real... While at the same time, a lot of their language does kind of emulate what you're seeing on MTV and black gang cultures as well. And of course, that kind of culture has really been shown into sharp relief by the LA riots, which have took place in 1992, when these racial issues have come to the fore. So is it a little bit unforgivable for Tarantino to be deploying this use of this language at the same movie?
I mean, he could argue that he was using it ironically to show these characters up and flesh these characters out about how their attitudes, etc. Regardless of whether he meant it ironically or not, the messaging that comes out, the optics aren't great, really, in that respect.
No, it was a hideous scene. There's a long sequence in the car when they're using quite racist language, and it was just a little bit... It made me deeply uncomfortable, which shows us again, this is where we are today, in a way that it didn't make us uncomfortable back then.
It probably would have washed over a lot of people back then.
It's interesting, I was listening to a linguist professor talking the other day, and she's talking about swear words. And what's happened in the last 20, 30 years in the UK is that certain swear words have lost their power. So, excuse the profanities, but fuck has little power these days. Even the C word has little power these days. What British people find more offensive are racial terms. Yeah. That's in the last 5 or 6 years that to call someone racial terms, to use them, has become more offensive than the usual swear words which 20, 30 years ago were offensive. But let's not forget, this film was criticised for its fucks.
Yes.
Back in the day. What did you think about?
Yeah, it didn't even touch the sides, to be honest.
It's weird.
I wouldn't have imagined that there was anything unusual about the language used in this film. The profanity. What stuck out to me was the racial language. So you're right. I mean, it's interesting how languages change and attitudes develop alongside language.
Yeah. I mean, even the C word, which is always the no-go.
Yeah.
As now it pops up in dramas, TV dramas, and especially streaming service dramas, which aren't hidebound by the same rules and regulations as like ITV and BBC. So, speaking of changing perceptions of, what did you think of the violence in this film? Because obviously it was heavily criticised at the time for being an ultra-violent movie. What did you think?
I remember when I first watched it thinking it was quite enjoyable to see that level of violence. Watching it again yesterday, it was gratuitous and it was really voyeuristic as well. The use of it in the story was fine, to be honest. I mean, it was kind of painting a picture of Mr. Blonde, played by Michael Madsen, being a complete and utter psychopath, torturing this cop who gets taken hostage by the diamond robbers. So it was a physical torture because he cuts his ear off, and a psychological torture as well because he threatens to set him alight. Now, some of the others, Mr. White, Harvey Keitel, and Mr. Pink, Steve Buscemi, do throw in a couple of punches and stuff. But that's as far as they go. This guy is an absolute psycho.
Yes.
So, the use of violence, I felt, was justified in this. But also, if people are going to get shot in the stomach and lie on the floor for about 4 hours, there's going to be a lot of blood. So that didn't bother me much. What about you?
The one thing that really, really surprised me was the scene where Mr. Blonde cuts the cop's ear off. In my mind, you saw it happening.
Yeah.
And actually you don't.
No.
The camera's very coy. The camera moves away from that. But for some reason, and I think it's because everybody was talking about that scene, that it was so kind of violent. I watch a lot of horror films. So in the early noughties, you get this whole trend of horror movies called torture porn, which are super violent. And this film does usher in a new way of depicting violence on screen. Natural Born Killers is going to come out, maybe 12, and that's going to be heavily criticised by the way, the kind of almost gleeful way it pictures violence. One of the criticisms about this movie is that the violence is quite stylised, and does that therefore make it cool? So the whole sequence with the ear severing, he's doing this funny little dance to the cool sound. The soundtrack is fucking great in this film.
It's great,
Does that then kind of glorify, and one of the criticisms aimed at it was that it kind of glorifies violence by showcasing it in this kind of cool, stylish way, which detracts from the real horror of violence. But I was not bothered by it, and I was actually surprised at how tame it was.
Yeah, me too.
Given what I remember, the fuss about it, it was, and then it comes back to something we talked about way back when we talked about Madonna, Justify My Love. And she was saying around this time, it's okay to show all this stuff going on, but you can't show people having sex and it just felt it was part of that whole hypocrisy about violence or sex, it was super interesting again that it wasn't that bad.
No. Going back to the ear cutting, like you, when I was watching it thinking, oh, here it comes. Here's where we see the ear being sliced off. And of course you don't. Like you say, it very skillfully pans away from that. I was listening to an interview on radio from a psychologist saying that, this is pretty usual. When people say, oh, did you see the ear cutting scene? Then people automatically assume that you watched the ear cutting scene. It's the same when people witness a murder or an accident and they're interviewed by the police. They've been hearing people say at the scene of the crime, did you see that guy who had a white coat on? They will say, oh yeah, that guy who ran off with the white coat, but they've never seen the guy in the white coat. It's just what they've been told, the picture that's been formulated in their head.
There's a famous study from the early 90s, I think, that was done in Holland when a light plane had crashed into a building. And this is when that phenomenon was first observed, because the amount of people who said they saw the plane crashing into the building and hadn't at all, but because of the discourse around it, people had put a very vivid image in their own heads and genuinely believed that so it's definitely a thing. And I was really shocked when I was expecting
I
to see.
It was nuts.
Yeah, it was
You
really
thought
weird.
I've got a very vivid image of
the
that
ear.
razor blade cutting the ear off.
Absolutely. Human
That's
nature.
the power of
all its
suggestion.
glory, love.
That Quentin Tarantino's a genius.
Give me a little top up,
Oh,
darling.
let's have a little top up because we're in danger of starting to make sense.
Yeah,
here.
really.
Oh, there we go. Oh, here we go.
Thank you, darling.
Careful, darling, because you're tipping.
Oh,
You're tipping.
sorry, darling.
There we go.
Tipping.
I've dribbled on the John Lewis. So, like we said before, this story is a non-linear storytelling.
Yeah.
Which is when the story jumps backwards and forwards, but still has a kind of like a running narrative all the way through and formulates story and stuff. One of the backstories that I really enjoyed was Tim Roth's backstory, who plays Mr. Orange.
Yeah.
So Tim Roth's journey in this is that he's an undercover cop. So he's infiltrated this diamond heist gang.
I'd completely forgotten that, by the way.
Throughout the course of it, he's lying, he's been shot in the stomach, he's bleeding out, he's going to die pretty soon if they don't get him to hospital. And the whole crux of the film and the story of the film is them debating whether to take him to hospital, whether it's safe to. And meanwhile, Mr. Pink in particular knows that they've been ratted out, that there's a rat in the pack, so to speak. A dirty rat. Because otherwise, why would the police be waiting for him at the diamond heist?
Yeah.
That's the whole kind of crux of the story. So then we see more of Tim Roth, Mr. Orange's backstory about how he was recruited to go undercover, all the machinations behind how he managed to infiltrate the gang, etc. I just thought that was the best thing about this story. I just thought, for an actor like Tim Roth, he's an English actor, he was utterly convincing as this American undercover cop.
Yeah,
I just wanted to highlight that as one of my favourite bits of the movie.
Well, it really humanised that character, didn't it?
Yeah.
And there's that lovely sequence in his flat when they're waiting for him downstairs, when he looks around and he puts his wedding ring on. Gives an extra layer to that character, the kind of Karate Kid vibe. And he has to learn the story, and it's like telling a stand-up joke. And you got the real sense of that. And as a consequence, makes the whole thing incredibly tense.
Yes.
And then when they're in that car having that really awful racist conversation and he's in the back... But it also reinforces the tragedy of his character because he's the one that's going to end up getting shot. And I did read somewhere that Tim Roth had said that he's an Englishman playing an American who's pretending to be a gangster. It's kind of this triple layer of...
Yeah, absolutely. And his character's really fleshed out because when the heist goes wrong... and the car won't start. Yeah. They have to hijack a car, don't they?
Yeah, which is very Grand Theft Auto.
Yes. Yeah. The woman takes a gun out of her glove compartment and shoots Tim Roth, hence why he's bleeding out. But in response to that, Tim Roth, an undercover policeman, turns around and shoots the woman dead.
Yeah. And at the same time, he's also had to watch Harvey Keitel shooting other policemen dead who are his fellow officers. Yeah. It's a really clever,
It's really good. Yeah. And I wondered, I've got a question for you. Yeah. So, gazers, if you haven't seen the film, apologies, this might be a bit of a spoiler.
Well, we've spoiled the whole fucking thing now, so it's a bit late for that.
I'd skip forward by about a minute if you don't want to hear what happens at the very end. At the very end, when the police are outside and they know the gig is up, everyone has more or less died or shot each other. Yeah. Mr. White, Harvey Keitel, having formed this brotherly bond with Tim Roth, crawls over to Tim Roth, and Tim Roth says to him, "I'm the rat. Yes. I'm the undercover police officer." Yeah. Now, my question to you is, why did he do that? Did he do that because of what you said about this preformed brotherhood and it was the honourable thing to do to inform Mr. White that he was the snitch? Or did he do it because he knew Harvey Keitel would shoot him dead and put him out of his misery?
I thought it was the fact that he's facing death and needs to just have one last untruth made true. That's what I thought. Right. Again, you don't see it, but Harvey Keitel clearly shoots him.
Yes.
And they're all dead because Mr. Pink has taken the diamonds and gone outside, but the sound from outside is police and more shooting, so you assume Mr. Pink's also dead. So they're all fucking dead by the end of it. But I thought, what did you think? Why did you think Tim Roth did it?
Well, I was in two minds as to whether it was because an honourable thing to do, honour amongst thieves and all that kind of thing.
Well, there was no honour amongst thieves, that's the thing.
But honour amongst, they'd formed a bond with each other, hadn't they? Mr. White and Mr. Orange, Tim Roth and Harvey Keitel. Or I just thought, is it because I can't stand this pain anymore and I just want you, I know if I tell you you're going to shoot me, you're going to put me out of my misery. Yeah. So it's open-ended, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, and I love that ambiguity. Yeah. So we can then fill in the dots afterwards, can't we?
I just want to circle back to circle back. It sounds so wanky,
Listen
doesn't
to
it?
us, yeah.
Off his tongue.
Come on, sir.
I just want
Apprentice.
to. I just want to circle back to Lawrence Tierney, who plays the
one everybody hated.
Yeah, the Kingpin.
Yeah.
Now, he was a really established actor from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and he was brought in because of his gravitas and his history. You know, Quentin Tarantino loves the movies. Obviously, he'd highly rated him as an actor and thought he would be perfect for this role. Onto set walks this total train wreck of a human being who is notorious within the industry for starting fights. Hints of that perhaps he was involved in something a bit more serious, i.e. murdering somebody at some point.
God, really?
And starts to be an utter arsehole on set.
Right.
They all go out for lunch one day and he steals things from the restaurant. He openly abuses people, waiters, the fellow cast members. He's difficult, he's late, he's drunk. It's just everything that a director would absolutely hate to have in one of their actors. Is argumentative with Quentin Tarantino, won't follow direction. In the end, they reduce his part because they just need to get this fucking nightmare off set. Right. And obviously I've been a director and I've directed actors on set, and my experience for the most part, with you as well. For the most part, my experience of working with actors has been great. 99.9% of actors are great. You know, we all on set, we all know what we're there to do. We've all got a job to do, and especially in where I work, you know, in the soaps and stuff. You know, time is money. You know, you've got to finish on time,
get professional,
on time, on budget. People are there every single day. There's no time for any arseholery. Polite and pleasant to each other. Get the job done, and then we can have a bit of fun. If you got an actor like this on set, the ripple effect, they suck all the energy.
The oxygen,
If you're Quentin Tarantino and you fought tooth and nail to get this film funded, to get the crew together, and I can imagine that there was a hell of a lot to do in a short space of time because, again, time is money. And then you get this, what I could only describe as a CUNT walk on set. I don't care what issues you've got going off outside. Come on to set and just play the game. And then Quentin Tarantino at the end of this film said, I will never work with that man again. And I think he dies obviously not long after. But can you imagine having that sort of reputation on set?
God, I mean the flip side is he's fucking great.
He's great.
You know, he's really scary. Probably for
and then when you're Quentin
reasons.
Tarantino, you're sat in the edit watching it, probably battle scarred from this production. And you realise you've got you've got gold there. But what you had to go through to get that.
Get it. Oh my God. I know.
My previous capacity as a first assistant director, which is the person who has to juggle all the elements of the set and got eyes on everything, costume, makeup, light, sound, camera, actors, just making sure that everybody's ready for you to call action. You know, you're the director's right-hand man. I was just thinking, to have a guy like that on set and to have all these male actors on set where their job is to be these posturing, ultra-violent males. I wouldn't have wanted to be a first assistant director on this set. I can imagine it would just be really nerve-wracking. The anxiety of being on this set must have
every
been,
day. Imagine waking up thinking, "Oh God, what's he going to do today?"
Oh God,
I love it when you talk technical.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but I mean, you know, Quentin Tarantino as a director is obviously very, very well respected, and I would imagine, I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine he runs a really tight ship and he leads by example, and he's
apart from when nearly killed Uma Thurman in Kill Bill.
Well, yes, that also. But then I would argue that there were producers there who probably should have said to Quentin at that point. Probably not a good idea
to put her in a Jeep and send her high speed with a camera strapped on the front.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as a director, you want that shot. So, you know.
But maybe not your leading lady.
Yeah, but I mean, you just assume that, you know, all the health and safety's being filled out.
It's 1996. There's no fucking health and safety. You know, heard of back projection, Quentin. I've got one last point I'd like to make.
Yeah, go on then.
Just a tiny little interesting snippet. In Tim Roth's flashback, one of the things to establish himself as a criminal is he has to take a weed delivery. And he's talking about this story about a weed delivery. And he goes into a toilet and there's a load of cops there talking. And the cops' conversation is all the violence that they have inflicted upon criminals. And again, you get the sense of this one-upmanship between masculinities that you've had amongst the men of Reservoir Dogs, the characters, but also the lawmakers and the law upholders indulging in the same kind of vibes and dynamics amongst themselves, the one-upmanship, the pressure to be that top dog, the stories, and thinking to the conversation in the car, the horrible misogynist, racist conversation, is that there's a real disparity between the way men talk to each other and women talk to each other. There's all kind of studies about this. And when men talk to each other, invariably they make themselves the stars of their own movies.
I see, yeah.
They are so much more to use sexual banter, tell dirty jokes, but also revel in violence in a way that female conversations don't at all.
Yeah.
And here we have it, two sides of the same law coin in this film.
Yes.
Indulging in that same kind of conversation and banter and all this kind of stuff. I thought that was a really good little...
That's fascinating.
Good little snapshot.
Yeah, really good, really interesting. I'm pleased you talked about the scene where Tim Roth goes into the toilets and he sees the cops, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he's got this bag of weed and he has to act very nonchalant.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was one of the scenes where there's a kind of a complete break of convention in the storytelling process, because Tim Roth, like we talked about his backstory before, he narrates his backstory.
Yes.
And in this scene, he continues to narrate his story in a voiceover, but then the voiceover becomes his actual voice and he starts speaking his story to the cops, talking to the cops, and they're looking at him and he's telling the story about, I've got the weed in the bag and everything like that. So it's a real break in convention. And I wondered if that was Quentin Tarantino just thinking, in this scene, I'm just going to use something I've drawn on from a different film.
Yeah. Maybe it's that kind of, it's my first one, I'm going to show off lots of different things.
Just break the convention there a little bit. And I thought that was quite sweet. It's quite an odd. And I think he does that in quite a lot of films.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of his films are quite successful and really interesting, because you think you're watching one kind of film and then all of a sudden it'll break out into a completely different style, different theme, different tone.
I just fantasize about Quentin Tarantino directing a couple of Tales of the Unexpected, darling.
Yeah, he'd be great in that, wouldn't he? So what do you think about Pulp Fiction?
I haven't seen it since it came out, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a much more accomplished film.
Yeah.
From what I remember. And Kill Bill I saw it when it came out, but I can't remember enough about it. I did watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood recently.
Yes.
Really enjoyed that. But I think that's one of his more traditional kind of movies in terms of storytelling. And
apart from the reversal of expectation at the end.
Yes.
Which is basically, so Sharon Tate doesn't get murdered and the murderers get their asses kicked and then it turns ultra-violent again.
Yes.
So I like in Quentin Tarantino's films, you have to expect the unexpected.
Yes.
Because he'll always flip it.
That's why he should have had a Joan Collins back in 1978. Love, it'd been fantastic. All those tales of the expected really would have become unexpected.
Yes, absolutely.
Wasted opportunity.
Yes, I like a good rug pull, me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Another euphemism?
Maybe. Yeah, I like pulling rugs. Well, let's wrap this up then.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this motherfucker up.
Let's wrap this motherfucker up. What would you rate this movie?
I would rate this movie 7.5 severed ears out of 10.
Right. To my surprise, I would give this 9 sharp suits and sunglasses out of 10. I really enjoy it. I'm not going to point off for the racism, the racist language and the casual misogyny sometimes, but really absorbed, really involved, really enjoyed it.
Fantastic.
And I was really pleased we watched it. And maybe it's because my PhD looked at masculinities, but thinking about all those different things I was able to use from my PhD and apply to look at that, I found it really interesting and really loved it.
Oh, this is right up your Strasse then.
Right up my Strasse.
Why do you think it's called Reservoir Dogs?
I've no idea.
No.
I did wonder that and I've no idea.
For another time, maybe.
Another time.
The
after show party, darling. We'll have a little discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheers to that, darling.
Cheers for that, darling.
That was a good one. Clink.
So what are we looking at next episode, Dave?
Next episode, I was just taking a sip of my champagne then, sorry. Champagne. Well, it's not champagne, it's
Grigio.
It's one step up from Asti Spumante. Let's
fake it till you make it, love.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, when we get to the Royal Albert Hall, we'll have that champagne, we'll have that Dom Perignon.
Oh.
Lauren Perrier.
Flowing in a fountain in the corner.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On ice, Next week, okay, so It's Mother's Day very soon.
Mother's Day. So are we having a heartwarming story of maternal love, darling?
We are. It's going to be really nice. You're going to love it. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice for all the mums out there.
Yeah. It's Mommy Dearest, starring Faye Dunaway.
As Joan fucking Crawford.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Now, I don't think it's spoilerific to say that Faye Dunaway as Joan Crawford won't be winning any Mother of the Year awards.
No, it's quite the film, isn't it?
It's quite
its reputation over the years has... Actually, its reputation when it came out very quickly changed from Oscar contender to camp classic in the space of 6 months.
And in fact, it won several Golden Raspberry Awards.
Yes.
Oh,
Proper windy pops. I'm so sorry.
honestly,
Everybody.
Honestly.
Oh, well, that's exciting.
That's exciting.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, I would encourage our gazers, if you haven't seen it, to track it down.
Please do.
It's on all the usual sites, etc.
I mean, if you want to know, one of the big influences on the gays in the last 50 years. Where's it from? 1980, 81?
82, I think.
Right.
Oh shit, we don't know, do we? We're a bit razzed up now, but we will work it out.
We'll work it out. But if you want to know one of the big influences, then, you know. Oh, I look forward to that, darling.
Yeah, just remember.
No wire hangers ever! And on that note, a reservoir.
Tina, fetch me the axe.